Welcome back, students. Big diagram. You people must be a little bit confused while seeing this. But when we will be moving phase wise, first phase, second phase, and third phase, and so on, you will find it comparatively easier. You have done this in class 10th. Those whom I taught this in the same way at the level of class 10 too. But even if I have not taken your class in 10, I will be doing all those explanations here again. We will be moving sequence wise, but as of now, first of all, you understand where what is happening, right? If you can see in this diagram, I have marked three phases. I have drawn a table where three phases are there. The first one is, just hold on. The first one is menstrual phase. You have the other word, bleeding phase, right? Followed by was the follicular phase and then the secretory phase. And in between this yellow band, the phase which was marked only by 1 day. I have allotted a yellow band to it, and it is the ovulatory phase, if you can see it here at the bottom. Right, children? So, three phases, rather literally, there are four phases, and I have given you the sequence too. Now, you see at this left side, some portion is allotted to the changes which are marked inside the uterus, and the second portion is allotted to the ovary, so that you understand how the changes in the ovary are connected with the changes in the uterus. There is an interconnection between both of them. That's why I have written the changes in the uterus and the changes in the ovary near to each other. And the third one here, rather I should say very important one, hormonal status. What are the hormones which basically help in completing this menstrual cycle in a female? So hormone participation is also to be explained. We will be starting here, just hold on. We will be starting here with the first phase, menstrual phase. What we have to see, that in menstrual phase or bleeding phase, what is the status of the uterus, what's the status of the ovary, and what are the hormones which are working here, right, children? First phase, you can see that this red shade, I have provided this red shade. Initially it's fade, then it becomes much darker, and then it becomes very much dark, right? This is just to let you know that much blood supply is getting in and in and in. So the first phase, since it is marked by the bleeding phase, bleeding means shedding off of endometrium. These red lines, these are showing that this is blood going out of your body, right? And this endometrium is also rupturing, and it goes off from your body through the vaginal opening in the form of blood clots, right, children? So blood from the ruptured capillaries, blood is leaving your body. Along with that, sometimes we do see certain clots. We see them as blood clots, but they are basically the endometrial clots which are rupturing in small pieces one by one, and they shed off from your body through the vaginal opening, right, children? So I have labeled the portion as endometrium so that you understand that this whole portion is endometrium, right? So we believe that if all endometrium is ruptured and gone out of the body, that means the thickness of the endometrium is least in this phase, because it is already ruptured. When something is torn, it is ruptured, it is going off from the body, you cannot draw it thick, you have to draw it very thin because it is damaged, right? So what we see is that in menstrual phase, the endometrium is damaged because it is going off from the body in the form of clots. And at the same time, in the ovary, if you can see, you have already seen the diagram of the ovary. I'm just drawing it rough-handed for you. This diagram you have drawn, and I have told you the stages of development, if you remember. This is just to let you know I am not drawing the ovary every time. I am drawing the status of follicles here, right? So please see that I am only drawing the status of follicle here. So at present in bleeding phase, since what you have to see here is that the hormone progesterone is in least concentration, right? When hormone progesterone is in least concentration, this is something which stimulates the release of GnRH. GnRH is gonadotropin releasing hormone. As of now, you just learn the names of the hormone. We will be discussing it in the form of a flowchart later on. So as of now, due to in bleeding phase, why bleeding is occurring? Because the progesterone is critically low in concentration. That's why the endometrium is not able to be stable. And second thing is this status actually helps in release of gonadotropin releasing hormone, which ultimately releases GTH. Now GTH is a category. Right. Category means gonadotropin hormones. In males and females, it will be releasing FSH and LH as and when required. Right, children. So, gonadotropin hormone would be releasing FSH, and then the phase would come as follicular phase. Why we are calling it a follicular phase? Because the FSH is follicle stimulating hormone. That means whenever this hormone is released, it will be helping in the development of these follicles. Right, children? So follicular development is the characteristic feature of FSH, and that's why a speedy development leads to the formation of this structure, Graafian follicle, where you can see this is the cavity. You label it as antrum, and in the center here is the ovum. Right, children? So you say that this is Graafian follicle. Up to Graafian follicle stage, we discuss in follicular phase, right? This was the change in the ovary. Now what is the change in the uterus? Things are interconnected here. I told you that changes in ovary and changes in uterus, they coordinate with each other. How do they coordinate? Just see that when Graafian follicle is formed, it will release estrogen. And when it releases estrogen, we say that estrogen helps in the repair of shed or damaged endometrium. So in the previous phase, bleeding phase, when the endometrium was damaged, what we have to do? We have to repair it up, and this repair is done by the estrogen. From where estrogen has come? Estrogen has been released by Graafian follicle. Right, children? Fine. So the repair of the endometrium is done in this phase. So up to 7 to 13th day would be follicular phase. And here when we know that okay, the ovum is ruptured, ovum is completely developed, and now this is needed to be released out of the body. That means this ovary has to be broken somewhere, and something is needed to rupture this wall and all, right? At that time, what happens? At that time, the luteinizing hormone is released from the anterior pituitary. Now this luteinizing hormone is at its peak when the ovulation day is near. You call it LH surge, right? Luteinizing hormone is secreted in higher concentrations to be at its peak at the time near to ovulation. Why? Because it has the role of rupturing the ovary, rupturing the follicular wall. So once the follicular wall, you can see the diagram is here, and after the yellow band, since LH is the characteristic feature of this yellow band, when luteinizing hormone is released, it leads to the rupture of ovary wall, and ovum is released out of the Graafian follicle and the ovary. You call it ovulation. Right, children? Once the ovulation is done, that means 2 phases you have completed. Now you have third phase, rather, you have discussed, and now you have to enter the 4th phase, that is the secretory phase, right? In secretory phase, the remnant, I mean, once the Graafian follicle was ruptured and the ovum was released here, then the remnant, the residue, transforms into corpus luteum. That's why I have shaded it yellow, so that you understand that this is corpus luteum, and this is going to release the hormone progesterone. Children, progesterone is also known as pregnancy hormone, because if you want pregnancy to be healthy, at that time the body needs higher concentrations of progesterone inside the body. right? That's why it is so much needed, because it further thickens. You can see at the base I have written, right? It leads to further thickening of endometrium to make it more spongy, more cushiony, so that this is something which is the preparation for implantation. Ovum is released, body assumes that okay, this released ovum is going to be fertilized, and the zygote will be formed, and that zygote has to get embossed on the endometrial wall, so endometrium has to be very, very thick. This is just an assumption. So if the fertilization occurs, fine, this thickening has a function, so it will persist. But if fertilization is not there, in case ovulation occurring is a normal phenomena every month, but it is not necessary that every time the ovum is going to be fused with the sperm. So in that case, this thickening is useless. And what happens then? At that time, this corpus luteum, if no fertilization case is there, this corpus luteum transforms into corpus albicans. It regresses, right? Corpus albicans. You might see I have written there regression, right? Regression of corpus luteum. That means you will be calling it corpus albicans. These are the structures, and these are debris. They don't release any hormone, and since corpus luteum is not there, so progesterone will also be not there, and in that case there will be a time when progesterone level will fall down critically, and this falling in progesterone level would lead to shrinking of this thickening of endometrium, and this is the beginning of the bleeding phase. Again, if you see there, I have written low level of progesterone, and here also I have written low level of progesterone. So low level of progesterone never supports the thickening of this endometrium, right children? You need to understand the last thing here, that is that when this endometrium thickens, there are certain facilities, because your body is assuming that after the ovum is fertilized, suppose if fertilization is there and this ovum is fusing with the sperm to form a zygote, and zygote, the blastocyst form comes and engrosses over this, it just settles in this endometrial cushion, right? At that time, this developing embryo will be needing nutrition. So your body, your endometrial thickening would supply much amount of blood by coiling up, super coiling of the artery, so that surface area or the supply of blood is increased. Your uterine glands, these are the glands that work at a particular time. These uterine glands also become active, and they secrete mucus, which is also known as uterine milk, so that the developing fetus can be provided nutrition there. But all these facilities are only given if fusion occurs. In case of no fusion, none of the facility, you will be initially you will be preparing for these facilities, but when you come to know that there is no fusion in the body, and now you don't need uterine milk, and you don't need much oxygen, you don't need much nutrition, so at that time the corpus luteum, it converts into corpus albicans, and the progesterone level falls down consequently. Right children, I hope this much is clear to you, and if you have any queries regarding this, it might confuse you at times, so if you have any queries, feel free to ask me.